Ladies and gentlemen, we are live once again on Friday, May 15th, and here's a little squeeze for you. Guys, how about that? A little squeeze in quintessence to rock us in on a Friday or Friday, I say May 15th, 2026 here in Newport Beach, California at our outdoor secret location because our indoor secret location was overrun overnight by a herd of invading aliens who look like Bigfoot, and were curious about near-death experiences. So I decided to let them have it, and I forced myself outdoors into the gray, cold day. It's actually not that cold, but into the gray, cold day, so we can continue our chats on politics and current events. And guys, uh, I don't. I had actually hoped to do something a little different today, beyond just being outdoors. Uh, but as I went over some of the notes I wanted to mention today, I kept coming back to the issue of credibility that I addressed ad nauseum yesterday. But when you apply yesterday to current events, I think you'll see that we're being called to action as good Democrats. We are being called upon to vote actively, early, not be intimidated. We Democrats are make no mistake about this. Uh, I want to say something else on credibility, and I cite the New York Times and the Financial Times a lot. And of course, at this point, the reason I do that is because they have credibility. Now, I was thinking not long ago when whatever the lie of the day was, and Trump says something like, "Oh, that's the failing New York Times," and I'm like, "Well, let's freeze right there, Don. Let me ask you this: so they're failing, right? Yes. Who isn't failing, in your opinion? Well, there could be my Truth Social, my X, Y, Z. So you see, when you confront them, they don't have an answer, and as much as any given person may not like to be confrontational, and it's usually not a good idea, so please don't do it. But there's nothing wrong with asking a polite question in a nice way. I mean, I've asked people, what was it about, or what did it take beyond January 6th to get some sense that, that Trump as president wasn't a good idea? Did he have to do something else? Like, wasn't that enough? And that tells you a lot about the person right there. If January 6th wasn't enough to convince somebody that Trump was not fit for the presidency, let's see, what could you have done? You might could have listened to all the warnings people gave, but no, it's the failing New York Times, right? So just having gotten back or on his way back from meeting with President Xi and half of the tech bros, you can't imagine what kind of stuff must have gone on there. Horse trading, nation selling, soul selling. I'm sure if it involved a dollar, it went on there, or was at least up for discussion. So, but let's start at the beginning. In that the whole Alice in Wonderland thing. When who was this testifying? The rabbit is testifying, and he says, "Well, I don't know what to say, Your Honor." And the judge looks down and says, "Well, start at the beginning, go until the end, then stop." And I'm like, oh, I think I will use that approach. So starting with this, this is a New York Times headline today. Trump butters up Xi, who stands his ground. Imagine that. And this is the parallel or the analogy here. Seeking quick deals, who could that be? Versus drawing long-term lines. Who does that sound more like? I don't think that anyone has ever accused Donald Trump of having ever done any long-term thinking, particularly long-term thinking about the consequences of his actions. I think we can. I think there's enough evidence to support that conclusion. Okay. And now there's another kind of Chinese-related headlines. A headline: Trump might welcome Chinese investment in the U.S. Americans, we're too worried about jobs losses and security and all that. We really don't want China investing in the U.S., particularly, in the AI or data center fields. I mean, I would hope that if Trump does this, they just kind of gives Xi the keys to the White House and the legislature and everything else, because at that point, we will have truly been sold out lock, stock, and barrel. Okay, so let's get back to the initial conclusion here. The conclusion was that you have two representatives of two countries. You got Xi and Trump, right? Xi is 72, Trump is 79, and there is plenty of public knowledge and public evidence to support the conclusion that Trump is experiencing severe cognitive decline. Not to mention a couple of hundred posts in 3 hours on in the middle of the night. I mean, what sane person does that? What parent lets his child do that? What child lets his parent do that? I mean, it's just anybody else. The problem is Trump has such a high level to judge insanity. I mean, he's insane all the time. So, and everybody's used to that level of insanity, which would be off the charts for anybody else. But because we really don't know how insane he is, we keep giving him a rope. And like I said, this is a Democrat. We are an aggressively Democrat platform, and I will make every factual argument in support of the conclusion that not only is Donald Trump not fit to be president, but the Republicans are not fit to govern. So let's get back to the topic at hand. And let me just kind of blow over the biggies. Well, actually not. Let's skip ahead a second. While we're on the subject of Trump and Xi, right? Now, if those two were standing side by side, and one of them says, "We thank China for its order of 200 Boeing jets," and that would probably be Trump, right? We thank China for ordering. And what if Xi says, the Chinese equivalent of WTF? Okay. And that situation is pretty much, you can come to a middle ground. You can think that one person has more credibility than the other, which leads to two outcomes, or you can assume they have equal credibility. So let's see, who would be more credible, thanking China for an order of, or a non-existent order of 200 Boeing jets? Now, the way I look at it is that the only person that stands to benefit from that statement is Trump. Why? Because he's a vain, worthless POS is why. So he's going to do everything to make himself look good. And get this, he's even going to lie about it. Now, how shocking is that, right? He's going to lie about his greatness. So thank you, Boeing. Thank you, China, for your 200 jet order. And you got Xi standing there, WTF. Based on past experience, and admittedly secondhand experience through news accounts and New York Times, but I try my best to be as objective as possible. But there's just no, when the Washington Post counted 30,563 lies in the first term, you would have to assume that the pattern didn't break. You're not going to assume that the older he gets, he does less of it, right? Okay. So with that in mind, I would give the credibility edge to President Xi. And by giving any edge to President Xi, That means, get this, that China has a more reliable and a more honest leader than we do. How about that? How about that? Republican voters, and I assume some independents that gave Trump this chance, everybody was warned. Okay, but anyway, like I said, we'll just stick with the parts of Trump while we're talking about current events. And there's an editorial that really caught my attention. Actually, there were two, but the first one is the Iran war worsens America's democratic erosion. And as it turns out, there are like 12 categories that they measure democratic erosion. And the scale is this. You've got complete absolute democracy on the far left, and you've got complete absolute autocracy on the right. So you got a dictator, hardline dictator on the right, and the free spirited will of the people at the far left. Okay. So with that in mind, there are categories that they judge democratic erosion by. And these are all, research positions. And, if you disagree with me, let me know. I'm happy to show you my sources, and I'm happy to put my sources up against yours, and we'll see who's the more credible. So anyway, let's talk about these 12 categories of democratic erosion for a few minutes. The first measure is the degree to which the leader, listen to this, bypasses the legislature to get his way. Now, who does that remind you of in the most extreme way possible? Now, if you would have thought that on the old autocracy, democracy scale, you would have to assume that's, more than leaning towards autocracy, right? So he's showing autocratic tendency, number one, to bypass the legislature to get what he wants. Keep in mind, legislatures were elected by the people. As being in Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress meant to vest most power with the people. They despised and hated centralized power. Why? Because that's what the King George was. Centralized power is, the king, a dictator, right? That's why that's kind of how the U.S. came to be, specifically through freedom of religion when the Anglican religion became the the English church. You either believed or else. Okay, so freedom of religion was the foundation of America, bypassing legislature, bypassing those directly, those in closest representative contact with the public, with their constituents. Okay, that's number one. How about this? How about the tendency to stifle free speech and dissent? Now, I'm going to go out on a limb again and say that if you're weighing where we are on the autocracy versus democracy scale, and we're talking about stifling speech and dissent, I think, you know what? Could that be what they're talking about when he tries to get Kimmel off the air? When he takes pride in getting Colbert off the air? If anybody says something he doesn't like, he wants them off the air and has an extremely cooperative FCC chairman to help. So I would say, just my rough ballpark opinion, that as far as stifling speech and dissent, I think we are more to the autocracy than to the democracy. Because now Trump makes people think about what they say. And that chill on free speech kind of means he's already won, doesn't it? We'll come back to that in a minute. How about number 3? And this is the wild thing. This is really unprecedented in the U.S. Well, at least in modern U.S. history. What J. Edgar Hoover and Roy Cohn and McCarthy and what all those guys did was clearly going after, but it wasn't done as criminal prosecutions, which brings us to the third category: persecuting or prosecuting political opponents. That's like throwing the other guy in jail. Now, I don't recall too many Democratic presidents ever ever prosecuting their political opponents. I mean, there've been, nonpartisan FBI fraud, corruption charges on both sides, and that's how it is. And I'm pretty, I may not be perfectly centered, and I'm probably center left, maybe mid left, but I don't think anybody condones fraud or stealing or prosecuting political opponents who have committed crimes, and we'll go back to that later too. And how about this? This is the aging but ever popular number 4, defying the courts. And keep in mind, we had that 3-part system where you had the legislature, the executive, and the judicial. And those were Articles 1, 2, and 3 in the Constitution in order of priority. Okay. And we have the courts. Why? Because you don't have one guy saying, dude, this is it. You don't have a complete dictator autocrat here like they do in, I don't know, maybe like China, Russia. Okay, so we have the courts to determine disputes in a non-violent way. You have a problem, bring it to court. We'll get both sides. We'll have an open, fair hearing, and we'll in the court will issue a judgment, and the parties have implicitly agreed to be bound by the judgment. That's part of being a United States citizen, to respect the rule of law. Okay? And when you define the court, you are defying the rule of law. And think about that. Let's say the law says thou shalt not steal. Okay? And what if the guy says, well, it's okay to steal from me. I'll let you out of jail. Whatever happens, don't worry about it. We'll defy the courts. I think that Emil Bovee guy even had an F the courts order standing with his lowers before he got put on the bench, which is nauseating in and of itself. So you got a situation of defying the courts. Now again, let's go back on the autocracy-democracy scale. Defying the courts. How would Trump rate on defying the courts? Now, this is the guy who, after a court renders a decision, his positions will make me. Who's going to make me do it? Okay. And at that point, I think that's textbook defying the court. Anything other than, yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor, is kind of defying the court. And under the rules, makes you eligible for a contempt charge. And I think they have civil and criminal contempt. But either way, they take your freedom away and lock you up until you decide to testify. So, there's contempt hearings. And the bottom line is it's part, societies are like games. Without rules, they can't exist. And we have courts here to resolve disputes. And being a U.S. citizen means that under the Constitution, you're bound to accept the judgment. You may not like it. It's the most ludicrous thing. You might do whatever it is. But, the judgment of the court is final. Of course, people can appeal and all that, but you get where I'm going. When a neutral third party decides a case or an issue, then everybody's got a right to expect that the parties to that case are going to obey the court, and we can move on as a society. I mean, don't forget, all these things cost time, money, judicial resources, and all this. And just so you know, the most efficient way to eliminate the need for judicial resources and the need to eliminate all those congressional salaries, which is Trump's point. You eliminate those guys and leave me in charge. How it's much cheaper. We'll just go right to the source. And again, it's not like he, doesn't have a history of going for the quick buck. Okay. So defying the courts, I think we can give him that one too. So far, out of 12, he has 4 out of 4. Would you get worried? Well, I mean, you clearly got my attention at 4 out of 4. Let's see what 5, 6, 7, and 8 are like. Ooh, this couldn't be. I can't believe my eyes. Does it really say? I think it does. Declaring false emergencies. I mean, I laugh. I didn't know if they wrote that specially for him or what, but it's a legitimate category, and he is pretty much he owns that one too. So we have gone from 4 to 4 to 5 out of 5, with acceptance of the fact that Trump leans more towards declaring false emergencies than not. That's just kind of laughable. I swear, I at that point it was almost like reading The Onion, but I'm reading the opinion and editorial section from the New York Times. I mean, this is not The Onion. This is it. Okay, how about this one? Willingness to use the military at home. I mean, the list just gets more and more accurate. Willing to use the military at home. Now, I can't really remember the last time that was even a consideration with any Democrat, much less any Republican, using the military at home. Now, I don't know. It kind of seems like those ICE border patrol people. Doesn't that kind of seem like military? They carry guns and they kill people. And that's kind of what soldiers do. Carry guns and kill people. Carry guns and kill innocent people. Why? Because of the sheer incompetency at the top. It really is a situation where everybody's so incompetent that the mass incompetency is just overwhelming. And let's get number 7 in there real quick. Vilifying marginalized groups. Now, I had to think for a second. I'm like, which example should I choose? Right? That was what I was thinking. Which example should I choose? And we'll go back to the aging but ever popular Trump refrain. They're eating your dogs and cats. I think that was the Haitians in Minnesota or something. Now, if I'm a betting person, and if I'm like a Haitian in, I don't know, Miami, I think I'm getting a little worried about, being seen around. Yeah, I mean, Haitians eat your dogs and cats. And get this, not only do Haitians eat your dogs and cats, but because they eat your dogs and cats, you ought to vote for us. Does that make any sense? I mean, they're just, it's an echo chamber. It's an endless loop of an echo chamber is what it is. And when you do that, then it's kind of self-perpetuating, right? Think about that. An infinite loop of malice. And that's, anyway. Okay, so this is vilifying marginalized groups. And, I could have used the gay lesbian thing. And, I got to do it as far as this whole transsexual thing. I don't know what the what the proper remedy is. I clearly believe in equality. I think that likes ought to compete against likes, be that as it may. I don't know why you couldn't have a separate transsexual category, but if people are going into competitive sporting events with superior skills or superior speed or superior anything, it's not uncommon to handicap them. And I think you can generate, I don't know what it would be, 1 second per 440 yards or meters or whatever that is. I mean, assign the stronger person usually the guy that's transitioning to female, and just handicap them in some way. Make the thing even. If it can't be absolutely positively, like against like, and if it's just a free for all, then handicap. I mean, get some of those horse race guys in there, or sailboat racing guys. Sailboats aren't all alike, right? So when they race, they have to compensate for fast boats and slow boats because you just don't want the same guys winning it all the time. And what fun is that? I mean, that just penalizes the really well sailed small boat against the really poorly sailed big boat because it's just a big boat. And the notion is you shouldn't be allowed to buy a trophy. And likewise, you shouldn't be allowed to buy political office. So let's see. That was the. That was the. Jesus, sorry that we're still on the vilifying the marginalized groups. I just realized I said there were tons more than Haitians. I could have been a little more relevant and going with the male female transsexual sporting thing. But anyway, let's move right along. And the reason I want to move right along is because I swear you can't, you couldn't make this up. Number 8 on the measure of the erosion of democratic institute or norms, rather. How about this? Controlling the flow of information. Oh, I mean, I swear, if a comedian did this on stage, you would be laughing and you'd be just drunk with laughter. But the fact that you're letting me chat with you about this, kind of shows how just common it is and how crucial it is to unite to exercise our democratic power of voting. And guys, let's hope no Democrat sits this one out. I mean, the people who wanted better than Kamala, well, maybe the world wanted better than Kamala too, but she was a Democrat. She was good enough, and she was clearly superior to Trump. Oh, but anyway, let's get back to controlling the flow of information. And how do you control the flow of information? Well, there's 2 ways, or a combination. You either put out your own as the sole source of information. This is the law. This is the news stories for the day, and they give it to you. Okay. Or they can say something like, those New York Times guys really suck. So they plant the seed of doubt in your mind. So you have a mindset where you now just might kind of doubt what you're reading. And so you may factor that in when you read it. So you can see there's insidious ways to control the flow of information. And what's beyond dispute is that Trump and Republicans are pretty good at all of them. So once again, being objective and looking at the autocracy-democracy scale, it looks as though the evidence would support the conclusion that Trump is more likely to be autocratic in controlling the flow of information. Okay, if anybody wants to argue that, feel free. I'm just going to share with you that you may have an argument, and people tend to think that since there are 2 sides to an argument, that both sides are equal. Well, wrong go schmongo, pal. There might be 2 sides. One side's clearly superior than the other, and that's why usually the criminal gets found guilty, and the guy that says never saw it before my life is usually the guilty one. And I tell the story a lot. I just can't help it. And it's only tangentially about the controlling the flow of information. It's more like credibility again. But I still think of good old, bless her heart, Stormy Daniels and that trial that stemmed from the encounter in Lake Tahoe. And Stormy's in the hotel in the bed with Trump, and she's on the witness stand, and the lawyer asks her something like, what kind of underwear did he have on? And she says, red. And the guy goes, okay, red underwear. He says, well, you saw his penis? Well, yes, I saw his penis. Well, did it have any like unique characteristics about it? And so good old Stormy strained to, to notice things. And oh yes, it did look a little strange. I think it hooked to the left, whatever she said. And our attorney goes, okay, red underwear, unique penis, hooked to the left. Hooks to the left. That's right. I said, well, while we're, so the attorney says, well, one more question. And the question is, how was the defendant Trump in bed? And she says something like, I'm kind of middle, no big deal. So then, okay, so that's what Trump has to argue against. He's got to somehow convince the judge, the jury, whoever heard the case, that Stormy is a liar, that what she said is not true. And he could do it by saying, I had on blue underwear. I didn't have red underwear. He could say, my penis looks to the right, not to the left, right? So she's clearly not believable. And on top of all that, Amy actually got in bed, so she's completely has no credibility at all. Okay, that's what he could have done. But what's he do instead? He gets up on the witness stand and says the equivalent of, I never saw that woman before in my life. So, yeah, you got a little Stormy, and he's trying to, while he would be right to try to confuse her with the color of underwear, or which way his penis hooks, or how his sexual performance is, Trump goes right for the hammer approach. Never saw her before in my life. And guys, if this doesn't prove this one point, I don't know what to say. But when the only tool you got's a hammer, every problem was like a nail. And just, that's not a sign of like higher intelligence. Just, what's that thing? Just saying that, that limited approaches usually are the product of a mind with limited intelligence. So, just thought I'd share that. Okay, let's keep going on this because this is the editorial section of the New York Times weighing the erosion of democracy in the United States. I mean, why are we even talking about this? The reason we're talking about it is because it's happening. And this ain't no hoax. There's just no denying this one, guys. All right, let's move on to the last four, just because I know this is probably starting to get a little boring. But how about this? Trying to take over the United States. How is he on trying to take over the functions of government? I think he's, leads kind of high on that. I mean, nobody ever confused Trump with a collaborative kind of guy. I mean, he just wants to take over by brute force because it's all he knows. Yeah, it's just a sign of limited intelligence. And, unfortunately, most of the time when a person of limited intelligence is elected to an office, most of the time they get to serve it out, serve the full term. There's usually not an exception made, because he got stupider than usual. I think once you've achieved basic level of stupidity, which was, again, clearly demonstrated by electing Trump as opposed to Kamala Harris. I mean, could there ever have been a more stark choice than between Trump and Kamala Harris? When Kamala came out with the, Trump's going to have a revenge list. I'm going to have a to-do list. You knew who was going to tell the truth. What you didn't know was the extreme to which Trump would go. But yeah, trying to take over. I say if I had a limited number of dollars to bet, I think I would weigh that trying to take over thing. I would say that the Republicans are a lot more likely to be guilty of that. Okay. Ooh, we're closing in on number 10. out of 12. So far, that means we are 9 out of 9 for the old Don the Con. And yeah, that name is more appropriate with each passing day, and Don the Con. I say my new favorite is the ballroom, which could be easily solved. People just bought him a really big pair of underwear, because that would presumably have all the ballroom he can need. But apparently, I'm the only one that thinks that's funny. Okay, so the ballroom. Okay. How about number 10? Do I hear the drum roll? I don't hear the drum roll. I could probably find one, but I'm not going to bother right now. How about this? Creating a cult of personality. Huh. Let's see. Cult of personality. That means just having followers that do things robotically. I think that's what that means. And it's kind of like if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with your bull skate, that's what the bull skating is, the personality, or the personality is the bull skate. I think I like that better. The personality is the bull skate. And we all know about bull skating at this point, don't we? Yeah. I say it's like all they have is bull skate. And when the big lie was propagated, and you guys had like 60 chances to show some evidence, and you couldn't do it. At that point, your argument just kind of collapses and makes things more about you than the law, which is why Trump is happy to let people go. He doesn't care. He probably just makes more money. If he lets those 250 people go for his birthday, which is the country's 250th birthday, I think, that could, at the least, that's $250 million, $250 million for like an hour's worth of work, signed papers. Yeah, that's what we got. It's exactly what we have. Kind of glad we have these oranges. Okay. Now, number 11 is going to knock you over. It's like being knocked over with a feather. You actually can't believe this is on the list. How about, let me get this right. How about using power for personal profit? And I'm sure everybody remembers the big deal about the Biden crime family. I mean, those guys went to church every Sunday. There was no crime family there. There's no crime family, before Trump or after Trump. He is the crime family. So therefore, I can't really think of all the things he's marketed since he's been, president. Doesn't he have the credit card? Didn't he do the phones and the Bibles and what else? Oh, the Gibson guitars and the watches and the. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say Gibson. I meant to say Chibson, which is what happens when a copy comes from China. They call it a Chibson. And I'm sure, why do I think he put his name on it and retailed it for $1 kajillion? Could that be in conformity with known habits to support the conclusion? I think so. So power for personal profit. The whole thing about $1 million in pardon is you don't doubt it. Yeah. Do you think that Trump would pardon someone for $1 million? Yeah, I think so. I think, to Trump, he's just writing his name on a piece of paper. He has no idea what he's actually doing, or he may have some vague idea. But as far as any sort of long-term consequences, you are talking to the wrong guy. I mean, in some ways, I wish Trump was brighter. In some ways, I wish he wasn't. But what I do wish would be that he didn't rate so high on what would be 11 of 12 characteristics of how you measure democratic erosion. Now, do we have a chance that he could bat 1,000, that he could rate 12 out of 12 on the democratic erosion scale? What are the what would the question have to be? Well, let's look at what the final category is. And I was just a little glary, otherwise I'd do a drum roll. But how about this? The 12th characteristic, this is horrible, of the erosion of democratic values is manipulating the law to stay in power. Now, did they have to hire some comedy writer to get that line in expressly for Trump? Think about that. Manipulate the law to stay in power. Who in the world would do that? Let's see, would Honest Abe do that? I don't think so. How about George Cherry Tree Washington? Right? I cannot tell a lie. I chopped down that cherry tree. Does anybody see Trump in that category? Oh, that might be one person who sees him in that category because they actually think he's Jesus. So, and the point of that being that you would have to be completely delusional not to recognize Trump's fondness. How about that? His fondness for manipulating the law to stay in power. Yeah, guys, I wish I was making it up, but sorry about that. Orange is really good today. Uh, and now here's a second editorial that was, I'm not going to say it was scarier than the first, but it certainly wasn't any less scary than the first. And this was they do this thing. They have these dialogues between like two reporters. And lately it's been Brett Stevens on the right and Frank Bruni on the left. And how about this title? For New York Times editorial or conversation dialogue between Frank Bruni and Brett Stevens. The Trump dumpster fire is lit. I'll do that one more time. Just the Trump dumpster fire is lit. Now, and let's ask the question. Well, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, dumpster fires usually signify crises. A lot of stuff just going completely wrong through incompetence. Okay, this isn't chance. This is just sheer incompetence. And the first thing they talk about is Keir Starmer and how in England a centralist approach was not enough to keep him in power. That's kind of the moral of the story. As in Keir Starmer was not charismatic enough. And if you notice, that kind of holds true. People on the extreme left or the extreme right usually have some sort of charisma that makes people follow them and that makes them almost suspend their own belief system. But anyway, that's the Trump dumpster fire is lit in Starmer. And the centrist, yes, he just didn't appeal. Guys on the right on extremes, of course, are captivating. But can you be in the middle and still captivate a majority? Yeah, it looks like the answer's coming down to no. And they go on to say something like the biggest challenge in Western politics is, you used to have confidence or competence and sanity as some sort of middle ground. Used to be everybody could more or less agree on whether somebody was competent and whether somebody was sane, right? But guess what? It ain't so easy anymore, especially if you're in the middle. Because people disagree now on the middle. So they've uh, they've effectively isolated people in yet another way. Okay, so and now the counter, now the other side of that, I think Bruni says that wait a minute, we've got some Democratic left-leaning candidates with charisma. Then he goes on and names Lisa Slotkin, Buttigieg, Ruben Gallego, Josh Shapiro, and you just we just don't know how this is going to shake out. But we do know that without a massive, massive, massive Democratic turnout, it's not going to bode well for us for a long time. On the other hand, if we win big in November 2026 and November 2028, we might be in a position where there won't be another Republican president for 50 years. And that's about how much time it's going to take us to climb out of this position we're in. Okay. And then moving right along, we can't overlook this interesting MAGA thing. It used to be the far left hated Israel because they, were heavy-handed on the Palestinians. The Democrats used to hate that, but now guess who else hates it? The MAGA right. So Israel is now in a position of being hated by both the right and the left for the exact same reason. And what does that imply? An inability to capture the center. So Israel Israel knows what's going on. I mean, God knows their intelligence capabilities are beyond anything we can imagine. And just think about that. The Trump was selling Bibles, Trump Bibles. I think they had a copy of the Constitution in it for the low price of $59.95. Get them while they're hot. I mean, you've got people that would used to go to their grave for Israel now saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore. Quit selling them weapons to murder people in our name. And I think that's a little cavalier because I think until you've been to Israel and actually seen the proximity of the surrounding neighbors, that you might be a little more defensive than you would ordinarily be. Just thought I'd put that out there. Oh, and now let's move on to another element of the Trump dumpster fire. How about Kash Patel at the FBI and his congressional testimony? And I'm going to say ordinarily, I might be impressed with my own personal whiskey that was co-endorsed by the FBI, and that they just so happen to give me a few cases and I can just kind of hang out and drink and give them to my buddies. I don't know why that would disqualify anybody from being the head of the FBI. I mean, wasn't he the guy? No, that might not have been the guy. I thought he was the guy that did that 2,000 Mules, but that might have been Dinesh D'Souza. I don't keep up with all that a lot, but so like I said, another element of the dumpster fire. And how about this? Keep on the Kash Patel thing. As the shocking disconnect from reality is, what that means? Somebody like Patel that's as disconnected as he is means he'll never rein Trump in. Trump's more than happy to have this jerk as head of the FBI. Is there an easier way to get what he wants? I don't think so. Just, tell old Keystone Cash that, what would you tell him? Your you might ask him his girlfriend's got any friends. I mean, Trump's just, it's just another part of the dumpster fire, Patel. I mean, can you imagine is he ever going to stop anything? And the truth about it is, he only stops that which is just and fair, because he is completely subservient. And to be honest with you, he's probably not smart enough to be, dominant, but he's clearly limited enough to be subservient. Okay, so you got the FBI exploding. And now, let's just kind of, I shouldn't do this, but I can't help it. How about what they call the axis of evil, the George Bush speech? Well, how about the axis of quackery between RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz? An axis of quackery. And guys, I read that, almost rolled out of my chair. And the axis of quackery being RFK Jr., who readily admits to having half his brain eaten by a worm, and Dr. Oz. And I think I think they misspelled his name. I think it should be like Dr. Odd or something. I don't think of him as like Oz. I just think of him as Odd. So just a little suggestion I thought I'd run by you. So yeah, and that little discussion, Iran didn't even come up, and the dumpster fires lit. I hope you're kind of getting the idea that if there was ever time to be active in Democratic politics, and if there was ever time to join your local Democratic club, and if you're so inclined, take that extra step, put a sign in your yard, help stuff some envelopes, make a phone call or two. This is, I keep saying, it's all hands on deck time, and I'm pretty sure everybody gets the idea that that's like reinforced. So anyway, guys, I can't believe that's a little before 1 o'clock. First hour's almost gone, and I have yet to ask anyone to give us a call at 949-629-3820 and tell me what you think. Am I wrong on any of this? Is Trump's grip on autocracy getting stronger? I don't think it's getting any weaker. I can promise you that. So yeah, if you have any thoughts or opinions, call and let me know. If you argue positions factually, please feel free to call 949-629-3820. I am your somewhat semi-savvy politically minded host, Abby Kaufman, coming to you live and in color from his outdoor semi-secret location on Newport Harbor in Newport Beach, California, on a gray Friday, May 15th. And I want to let everybody kind of know that, people think about, sun and fun and surf and all that in Southern California. And the truth about it is, along the coast, it can be gray and overcast for a long time. It can go on for days. I mean, eventually the sun pokes through, but Southern California, the coast can be gloomy a lot of times, especially in the mornings. Hopefully it'll burn off today. One never knows, but it's Friday, and I'm eternally optimistic. And the reason is, the country's always been smart enough to answer the call of danger before. I can't help but feel that through the use of social media and Instagram and the users of Instagram, that the opportunity to stop false rumors is as great as the incentive might be to start false rumors. I think we know who we're talking about here. Should take some decongestants before I came up, but we'll when nature calls, we'll stop by the car and get some. Okay. So, guys, And I want to end the first hour with still in the New York Times, but this time on the business in the business section, as always, the front page, because that's where the front page news is. And on this one, its article dealt with Kevin Warsh, the new head of the Fed. And Warsh comes in, of course, owing Trump. And he talks about wanting to change the Fed and this, that, the other. And that kind of begs the question: what's wrong with the Fed? What needs fixing? What's it not doing? Or what's it doing wrongly? And I think the general consensus is that Powell was a superb chairman who did steer us into a soft landing. He did what's almost impossible. Don't forget, the Fed has two mandates: low inflation or 2% inflation and minimal unemployment. I think that's 5%. And it does this, and it's got crude tools, right? It's got interest rates. Oh God, how about that? Is the sun coming out as we speak? And the cloud cover is burning off, and the sun's coming through. Oh, this might be a sunny California afternoon, because it sure wasn't a sunny California morning. So yeah, what does the Fed? What kind of fixes does the Fed need? You can't. I guess Congress could grant it more tools, but rarely in Washington does increased power come about through legislation. Most times the Republicans just try to outright steal it. So. And now, but it's not like the Fed just gets to wake up one morning, have a really good breakfast, and say, God, I feel good. I think I'll lower rates today. Yeah, you can't do that. The Fed has tools and guidance, what numbers are acceptable, what numbers aren't acceptable, and all that. So, Kevin, again, what really needs to be fixed? Does Trump not have enough power? I say that's if somebody gets up in the morning, has a really good breakfast, and let's say they're a judge. Let's say the judge has a really good breakfast, just a supreme omelet, and he goes to work. He's feeling pretty good, and he's got the first case before him. DUI, or no? How about something minor? How about like speeding less than 10 miles over the speed limit? And how about the judge says, I feel really good. That breakfast I just loved. Go ahead and we'll call it even, right? You can't just do that. I mean, actually, a judge can. It's called gastronomic justice. But we want a little more out of our judges than, I feel good. Have a free pass. Because a free pass doesn't necessarily work in the best interest of society. And in that whom judges are supposed to represent, like society. Oh, and how about World Cup? Do you get the sneaking suspicion that there could be some no-shows with this? Keep in mind, that just means, that America's sucking wind even more. I'm telling you, when Trump was elected, we got a much more dangerous, much more incompetent guy than we had before. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record that's stuck in a rut, we were all warned. Okay, we were all warned. Let's see, for the second hour, I'm going to try as much as possible to kind of stay away from that and get into kind of like local California and Orange County politics. And I'm sure everybody knows about the big race to succeed Governor Newsom. And, you know, the Republicans do this all the time. They Their counter argument will be, well, we've got plenty of laws on the books, just enforce them or stuff like that. But what they don't tell you is they've refused to fund it. So they'll never kill anything. They just refuse to fund it. And, you just, they find Republicans find fault with by making arguments like that. Well, we don't need another law. We need to enforce the ones we have. Well, we need to fund the ones we have, guys, because you've effectively killed it, and everybody's onto it by now. So likewise, they'll say, well, Newsom ran the state into the ground and the deficit, and this, that, and the other. And I'm not bright enough to judge Newsom's financial acumen, but on the whole, I felt good with him as governor. I think his policies generally made California better. I think he recognizes that if any state anywhere leads America out of this morass, how about this? How about this from this moronic morass? It's going to be California. We have Silicon Valley. We have tech. We have the sixth or seventh largest economy in the world. I mean, California's a big deal, and it's a big deal to run it. And all things considered, Newsom was good enough for me. And even if he wasn't, I would certainly give him the benefit of the doubt, if only because of the virtue of taking on Trump face to face. The one thing I would really like to see that I don't know if I ever will, but I'd love to see Newsom challenge Trump to a debate. Pick the topic. I don't care what it would be. Pick any topic. It could be immigration. Let it be Trump's strong point. And let's hear a debate. Let's hear the pro and con. And then let's see. And you'll clearly be able to notice the difference between those two on the same stage side by side. And so let's say they couldn't even be that they did it remotely. We would see them side by side, and they would at least be hearing it in real time, or at least such as a orange tinged subhuman being occupying the White House can do. Okay, gosh. And I try to get up the credibility thing, but I can't do that. And I stopped by my little guitar group today that I was going to rock out for a few minutes and really just decided not to. But let's say there are people that tell you, oh, I'll rehearse the song so I can be good to play with the group. And let's say they get the song and the next week they show up and they go, I didn't get a chance to play it. Doesn't that kind of enter your mind? Like next time, like, geez, I wonder if you'll actually get a chance to practice and play it. And again, that's just another aspect of credibility as it pertains to everyday life. Is this guy telling me the truth, and can I depend on it? And I mean, there's plenty of innocent mistakes made. I make my own mistakes I make tons of my own mistakes regardless what kind they are. I seem to make them. I said there's no perfect person born yet, even though my mother might dispute that. She says I'm so bright, that's why she called me son. But I think she was just trying to bribe me and humor me. And the reason I think she's trying to bribe me and kind of humor me is you go in someplace these days and they go, well, kind of your name, please. And I'm like, well, Babatunde. And they look at me like, Babatunde? I'm like, yeah, I wanted Babatunde, but Mom wanted Norman. And, Norman won. So I'm like, but I really wanted Babatunde. So anyway, there might just be some imperfection there somewhere, but I would never tell Mumsy about that. Okay, along with those kind of folksy anecdotes, let me move on to the Financial Times because it's another one of those Trump China Xi things that you have to expect since he's on the way back from getting his behind handed to him by President Xi. And this says, this is the headline of the Financial Times. The Washington Beijing ties depend on the Taiwan question. Okay. And of course, Xi warns Trump, keep out. That's ours. Keep out. Don't sell those guys any more weapons. We're going to take this. It's in our backyard. Don't do this. And Trump, in the meantime, is probably going, because he probably doesn't know how to respond to somebody as bright as President Xi, short of either kissing his behind or trying to show who might have the longer or bigger weenie. And I got to tell you, I think as far as weenies, it'd be hard to beat Trump. Is there a bigger weenie in the world? If there is, let us know. Give us a call, 949-629-3820. And let us know if there's a bigger weenie in the world than Trump. Just have no idea how we got there. But anyway, moving right along. So, yeah, what do you think? What do you think? I think that Xi sees the long term. Why? Because he's a strategic thinker. And I think Trump only sees the short term. Why? Because he's an extremely short term thinker. I mean, I can't imagine how easy it would be to get like one step ahead of Trump and then just laugh all the way home. And world leader after world leader after world leader has done that. Especially after the NATO, Europe, Ukraine thing. You think those guys like us? You think they're like, bowing to us in respect? Yeah, I thought you might agree. I don't exactly think that's what's going on now. That doesn't seem terribly loud in my headphones when I chew the orange. But if it is terribly loud, feel free to give us a call, 949-629-3820. And let me know if my orange smacking is too loud or if you can hear it at all. But it's almost academic. We have like one more orange piece to go. So, and always Taiwan and the microchip, whoever gets Taiwan pretty much has the world. Their semiconductor production is just off the charts. And what are we going to do? What are we going to do with Taiwan? Would we really try to stop China? Would we, what would we do? Would we have gunboats cruising around? Or what would we do? How would we stop China from taking Taiwan? And I think as time goes on, America is clearly seen as eroding in every way possible. So I really don't see how the States comes out of this deal better. I certainly don't think that Trump is going to outsmart or outthink Xi in any way possible, which means we're automatically screwed because we've got Trump and they've got Xi. Who would you bet on? I think I bet on Xi. I don't think I bet on the old, Trump-a-rooney. Guys, that was a really good orange there. I tried to pack a little lunch to take with me, and it wound up being a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and an orange. And all I could think of was, orange, you smart. Ha ha. Thanks. Another one of those little bits of senseless humor that old Ab tends to specialize in. And let's keep going on this news front. And how about this? Ford started a new unit, a new division, Ford Motors, called Ford Energy. And Ford Energy has something to do with battery storage capacity and batteries for like data centers. And that's a really good topic to jump into, data centers and resources. I think it's pretty clear that whoever wins the AI war is going to be in a really enviable position for a really long time. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, you just so anyway. But let's get back to Taiwan. How do you stop China from taking Taiwan? Would we fight? Would we exchange missiles? What would we do? And whatever we would do, as long as Trump's in office, you have to assume that there's a high statistical probability that it will be the wrong thing or not work out. Um, so anyway, Ford is in this like battery development stuff for data centers. And these things are what a cajillion square feet, and their energy and water consumption are just intolerable. But it doesn't matter because America's all about the money. We'll say the land to pollute it, as backwards as that is. So it's my hope that this AI and data center boom, the sooner it crashes, the better. It's the only thing that's keeping the stock markets up at a decent level, and it's misperceived. There's no way those guys ought to have the power to zone in, zone out data centers and just take water. And keep in mind, this is the American West. I mean, water's still like a really big deal. And as people from the East Coast may not get it, but man, try functioning without water. Oh, what the toilet doesn't flush. So that's clearly a big deal. So anyway, oh guys, this is turning into a nice day. We were really glad the sun's starting to come out. Things are starting to burn off a little bit. I had stopped by my old guitar group for a little bit, and found that like nobody comes anymore. But it was, and it's funny. I had like an hour in between, so I just dropped by just to talk to some of the old people that I kind of missed, and you know, it was funny. It was just I got the same impression. Excuse me, as when I left. Nothing had really changed. So, and the point of that is, change is hard. I mean, the Republicans are going to fight every election tooth and nail. Specifically, and I'll give you like a really concrete example with a really, just a fine person. And I want you to guys hear this real quick. I do this at least once a show, and I didn't get a chance to do it earlier. But in light of as things are, it's just crucial to know who is trying to influence the refs. And I want you to hear this from one of the politicians that I respect endlessly. Her name is Ada Brasenio. She's originally from Nicaragua, came here as a child with her parents as refugees. And Ada, to me, is the American success story. She got a job at a hotel, organizes the workers, there's a union. She later becomes head of the union, later goes on to be the chair of the Democratic Party of Orange County. And, her parents were refugees. She did this. How is that not the American dream to improve yourself beyond your parents? I mean, she did this. And Ada delivers. She doesn't back down. I think the world of Ada Arsenio, California Assembly District 67, and I just think these. Number one, she deserves your vote on what she's done, but number two, she also deserves and earns your vote by virtue of what the opposition does. And I'm going to give you a little bit of that right now, right from Ada's mouth. Here it is.
So I got this in my mailbox yesterday and I thought, that's interesting. I don't remember ever sitting on a gold couch wearing a shiny gold jacket. And then I realized that they photoshopped me. This picture, and honestly, it's very flattering that they would Photoshop me hanging out in such a cool, trendy place. And who are the masterminds who came up with this message? Well, I have an answer. According to the documents that came out yesterday, it's the pollsters for the NRA, the Republican National Committee, and Devin Nunes. And that is the best they can do. Unfortunately, you're going to be seeing much more of this. Donald Trump's closest allies, corporations that have given him more than 20 million, are part of a group that has already committed to spending $3 million to defeat me because they're afraid of a union leader and a proud immigrant who will take them on and win. Many of these same corporations are attacking me, are profiting millions of dollars off of ICE contracts. So you're probably going to see me photoshopped into a whole lot of other things this election cycle. I hope they Photoshop me somewhere fun. But please remember, these are all lies, and they are funded by Donald Trump's allies.
So, guys, and we know there's been political dirty tricks for ages, right? It doesn't make them right, and it certainly doesn't do justice. I don't think it helps anyone to mislead. Like I said, come back to credibility. You put Ada up against any given challenger. Who would you believe? Who would you believe? Would you believe the frat boy, or would you believe the smartest girl in the room? I kind of, Trump to me is like the ignorant frat boy, and Kamala was clearly the smartest girl in the room. And people can object to her taking Joe Biden's place on the ticket, but I would argue that's a little misplaced, because when people voted for Joe Biden in the primaries, they effectively voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris ticket. It wasn't just Biden. So I think that's another example of making a mountain where there may have been nothing, much less a molehill. But you gotta keep your eye on people these days. Republicans have so many people so dedicated to winning at all costs. And I'll rephrase that. The Republicans have tons of people who care not one whit about morals or ethics or fairness or traditional notions of fair play and fundamental justice. None of that. It's like, who was it? Stephen Miller or somebody? This is the age of brute force. We're the biggest, baddest people around. We can do what we want. Now, as we can see, the Trump's clearly learning the limits of this approach. But, again, when you have limited intelligence, you don't expect a limited understanding. And I don't know. I think the chances of getting any sort of, comprehensible answer out of Trump is slim and none, and Slim's like out of town. So the odds of getting a cogent answer from Trump are like, I don't know. How about like non-existent? Yeah, that would be. That's right there with hell freezing over and all those other contingencies that will never happen. That still crack me up no end. Guys, with the glare out here, it's always a little hard to keep up with the time and also keep up my place on my monitor. But it appears to be about 1:20ish or so on Friday, May 15th, 2026. And in California, it's not so much Friday as it is Friday. At least that's what the kids say, Friday. But then again, the kids are all hopped up on the goofball, so don't put much faith in what they say. Okay, let's get back into the current events thing since I'm doing such a good job beating this to death. Oh, and how about this? This is on the opinion section of the Financial Times, and it was titled "Trump should go for no deal with Xi in Beijing." Okay, because any deal is going to be good for them and bad for us. Why? Because they have leverage. They have leverage, and we have Donald Trump's lies. You got leverage versus lies. Intelligence versus the absence of intelligence. We have somebody willing to be patient, play the long game, versus someone who tries to force the issue and makes the schedule his. I think I know which way is more likely to game out. And of course, it's not Trump's way or preferred, what do they call it, modus operandi. It's not his manner of operating. And you see, when you lie like that and you have no center, you have no authority because you have no moral authority. It's just do whatever it is I say, and somebody else might get the same answer, somebody might not. And that's why the Equal Protection Clause was so important. I mean, as bad as slavery was, okay, and it was bad, wrong. I can't defend it in any. I mean, I can make a defensive argument, but I would feel funny doing it. It'd be like saying a kind word about Hitler. Oh, he invented the Volkswagen. Well, how does that weigh against genocide of 6 million Jews and not counting how many others? So you see, it's really hard to give people credit because people tend to expand the good. And if Hitler did the Volkswagen, he's my guy. Well, you worthless POS. They also did mass trains to empty the cities of undesirables like Jews. Okay, and they just didn't send them someplace else. They killed them systematically in factories. Think about that. The trains came to the station, trains emptied, people killed. Next train, people get off, people killed. And this went on for years. So anyway, but let's say no deal in Beijing. And actually, Trump has absolutely zero leverage. Xi wants Taiwan, and he's going to get it from the likes of leaders like Trump because Trump's in a bind. He wants, Xi has what Trump wants. And Xi is just, he's a smart guy. And if I'm not mistaken, all of our major negotiators were fired when Trump and Doge and all that came in with the chainsaws. See, now you see what happens when the poopy-doo hits the fan after you get this lunatic in office. And, and we haven't even hit, any, more. Aren't we still trying to recover from like the last disasters in North Carolina and all that? That hurricane near Asheville. I mean, have those people gotten any money from Trump? I don't think so. For whatever reason, Kristi Noem had to personally sign off on whatever claims in excess of $100,000. And that means that every person wanted a garage replaced was, had to wait for Kristi Noem to sign off. And, it's bad enough when somebody competent has to sign off on pettiness. When a complete incompetent has to do this, guess what? They're incompetent. And if this administration has shown any given thing as that they are incompetent and they don't mind it, they actually kind of encourage it. Incompetence is, incompetence makes it easier to dominate. And that's the only tool in Trump's toolkit is a hammer or some method of coercion. The guy could not make a collaborative argument if he had to. And that was true 20 years ago, much less as much as his brain is gone now. And is this going to be like Russia? When Trump dies in office, are the newspapers going to say Trump suffers cold or head cold? Or are they going to tell us right away Trump died at his desk tweeting last night? I think they lie about it. Why? Because I love this expression. Because there is evidence to support the conclusion. This is not just a random finding. There is evidence to support the conclusion. I mean, now you get to the question of whether it's convincing evidence or just slightly convincing evidence or clear and convincing evidence or preponderance of the evidence. I think preponderance of the evidence is like 51% true. I think that thing about finding somebody guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, that means you've got to be like, I don't know, at least 95% certain of that the defendant is guilty. Because don't forget, we were one of those we were the country founded with the principle that it's better to let 100 guilty men go free than send one innocent man to prison. Now, I'm going to ask you, is that what you've seen or heard or experienced in the last year and a half? Yeah, I didn't think so. I just, it's so hard for me to actually say bad things. I try to be one of those, if you can't say anything nice about a person, don't say anything. But these are extraordinary times. America's had a few threats, and mainly because we're like in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, it's hard for people to sneak up on us. Clearly Japanese snuck up on us at Pearl Harbor. But as a general proposition, there's England and Europe on one side, and Japan and Russia on the left, and China on the left. So from our vantage point, we usually have some sort of warning as to relative incoming. So our position in the world is inherently safer. And I think Zelensky even mentioned that when just before Trump threw him out of the White House. Trump's trying to convince Zelensky to fold and take his cards and go home. And Zelensky saying, this could be you one day. Just because you have this nice ocean for a border doesn't mean it's a guarantee. This could be you too. And of course, Trump gets all defend. Oh, that'll never happen. So on and so forth. And what do you see? Well, last time I heard, Zelensky was offering drone technology expertise to the U.S. after being denied massive military aid by the states. How in the world is that anywhere near fair? The truth of the matter is, and we all know it, Zelensky's fighting NATO's war. And I mean, anytime territorial sovereignty is not respected, it's a job for the community, for a community of nations, whether it's NATO or whether it's the UN, whoever it is. There needs to be a group response. In the UN, you used to have the steady bloc that was opposed to Israel, but times are changing, or they may have already changed, and people know this. So the bottom line to you guys, at least to the Republicans, You can run for office, but you can't hide from what you did before you get there, and you certainly can't hide from what you guys did after you get there. Um, yeah, I think that people were generally pretty pleased with government employees. I don't honestly think there were employees that were the deep state. And see, and don't forget, all that does is discredit the flow of information, which in turn gives the speaker more control over information. And I don't forget, at an extreme point, isn't it just propaganda? Yeah, that which is designed to further the cause, no matter what the cause is, propaganda or propaganda. So anyway, doing too much stuff like that, but I thought I would try to make this interesting for the last like 30 minutes of the show. I'm usually good for about 2 hours a day before my voice completely gives out. I think if there were lots of call-ins at 949-629-3820, I think my voice might hold out a little longer. But when it's strictly me on the air for a couple of hours, I'm not used to speaking like for hours on end. I usually don't think I'm that entertaining. But that's why I appreciate everybody giving me the chance to speak up here on democracyradionetwork.com. I tell people we are an aggressively pro-Democrat platform. If you're a Democrat and if we can help you get elected, let me know. I'll set up an interview, post haste, and do everything I can to make you look as good as I can, while giving you the opportunity to make your case as to why you should be elected, what makes you the better candidate. And when we do stuff like that, that gets a little closer to being a pure democracy. Let everybody vote on it. And of course, we're too big today to have like 340 million Americans vote on the budget. But you get where I'm going with this. All right. Okay. So, and there was a quote in that Financial Times article I want to get into, because I just thought this is, compared to me, everybody's brilliant. But this said something like, the worst thing Trump can do is after as a major deal, because the major deal can't possibly deliver any sort of strategic benefit to, get this, a country lacking a strategy. A country lacking a strategy. Jeez. What a devastating assessment that is. A country without a strategy. That to me is like a country with a leader that can't lead. Where instead of steering the ship, we're getting blown about. And, the skipper is too stupid to duck into a port in a storm or to avoid the storm completely. When you got a skipper who heads for, dangerous weather, what do? As a country, regrettably, we've, at least enough of the Republicans have fallen in behind him to let him keep getting away with this stuff, and his family, and so on and so forth. Guys, the primary out here is June 3rd or June 2nd, I think. And right after that, you are going to see political advertising like you would not believe. Unfortunately, that means you'll see political advertising presented that are lies. They're not true. Like the Ada Arsenio vid I just showed. And so, when you see political ads, you ask yourself, Americans for blank. Well, who are these guys? And you can find out, but like everything else, it takes effort. And you have a choice. Do you believe the statement as is, or do you check and see whether it's true? And the answer is, depending on where the statement comes from, depends on how you treat it, right? And if you get it from if a credible source says that this is true, then you may be a little more inclined to believe it and not research it as much. So, again, particularly when the general election starts, the lies are going to start coming just heavier than you would believe because of the tremendous stakes involved in the 2026 midterms. I mean, you would literally have to have lived under a rock to not understand the implications here, and especially when you look over those 12 categories that are measured to regarding the erosion of democracy. I mean, think about that. We're in the United States, and we are subject to the measure of the erosion of democracy. And it's not like it just happened. I mean, we know exactly who's down doing it, right? I mean, we know, and we've got to act. It's not not killing people, acting, not violent kind of stuff. We just unfortunately, we've realized that trying to work towards the center may not always work. It may not always be possible. And for instance, if the center, if you were guaranteed the center vote, and that was enough to lose the election, you wouldn't be too happy about that. But if you were a hard left or hard right, you might just draw enough people to get that 50%. So you can see the distortions that usually come after primaries. The Republicans swear, "Oh, I'll never do X, Y, and Z," and then it's the first thing. Like I said, we Democrats are not without sin, but on the relative scale of benefits to country versus detriments to country, I would put the Democratic results up against the Republican results any day of the week, particularly in modern history. And by modern history, I mean like from 1960 onward. It just killed me when William Westmoreland, was lying to Johnson about the war in Vietnam. But we had moved on from there. We really tried to do much better, and with the proliferation of cameras everywhere, we just want the truth shown. And the question is, who is more likely to deliver that? Is it the R's whose behavior has shown just the opposite, or is it the D's who show that they act in conformity with those values? I just don't see how there's any reasonable choice besides a Democratic ticket. Again, I tell people not only do I want the Democrat, not only do I want the dog catcher to be a Democrat, not only do I want the assistant dog catcher to be a Democrat, but I want the assistant to the assistant dog catcher to be a Democrat. That's how serious we have to take it. And then, guys, we still can't discount the possibility of being cheated. I mean, and that's kind of why they called it the big lie. He lies and cheats and steals. It's that simple. And just because he's your guy does not make it right. And I would hope that after today, in dwelling on the Xi visit, Trump Xi visit, that you guys see this. So much of so important is credibility, and beyond that, there's you remember Superman, truth and justice in the American way. Well, truth was an objective truth, not like this. Today, as it is currently structured, Trump declares what's the truth and what isn't. And it's up to each and every one of us to push back on that. And like as this, the bottom line is it really reflects somebody's morality. And I think Biden was on target when he suggested Trump has the morals of an alley cat. Now, how this translates into being an effective leader, I don't know. But somehow he convinced enough of you guys. Of course, there's also a possibility that he didn't convince enough of you guys. He just kind of voted Republican out of habit, which makes things even worse and certainly doesn't speak highly of your ability to analyze a complex situation to come up with a reasonable decision. I saw my voice starting to go like badly now. And we don't have any idea what time it might be. Oh yeah, we did 140. God, my voice went down a hell of a lot in the last 10 minutes. See if we have any kind of a liquid to keep us going for the next 20 minutes. Hey, if I had half a brain, I would have gotten my big coffee mug and I would have gone to Starbucks and I would have asked them to make me a small coffee in my large mug with 1 raw sugar and some whipped cream. And then they would, a little goat milk too. And after they would do this, I would go, oh, that's really good. I bet the only thing that would make that better would be if I emptied this mini bottle of Irish whiskey in it and had a little drinky winky at Starbucks. Hey guys, just please believe this, for medicinal purposes only. That Irish whiskey and Irish coffee thing seems to help me. I know. I would have had chicken soup if that was available, but all I could find was Irish whiskey and coffee. So, being the resourceful sailor that I am, I said, geez, why don't I just combine the Irish whiskey and the Irish coffee and have a relaxing afternoon? Hey guys, that just might be how we wrap up today, Friday, May 15th, live and in color from our secret outdoor location on Newport Harbor in Newport Beach, California. And, I didn't get my usual shout outs to local politicians, but I always mention Kara Stewart and Kelly Brown, districts 3 and 5, running for city council in Costa Mesa, California. They're both impressive, but Kelly is off the charts. There's some people you like and some people you respect, and these women you respect. They just, if you look at Kelly's background, curriculum vitae, whatever you want to call it, you'll see that she's just superior. It's there in black and white. Whether you believe it or not, it's an entirely different question, but it's there. Okay. Same with Kara. And Ada Briseno, who I can't stop talking about in California District 67, running for state assembly. The woman has just earned her keep day after day. And it's like she says, because she's a proud immigrant who's a success, the Republicans out to target her. And she just seems like the American dream or the American success story. And I just don't believe in putting people down like that. I think they should be recognized and held up as examples to others as to what you can be if you come here. We are a nation of immigrants, or assassins, depending on how you look at it. But, when we came here, there were people here, the Native Americans, the Indians, whatever you want to call them. I think the proper term should be Native Americans because they were native to the country. And, we came over. I don't think anybody had much of an idea what was here. But it's not like we welcomed the Native Americans. And I'm sure a lot of it was, hostility as an invading force. But I'm equally sure that the Native Americans had a communal way of looking at things. And one of the beliefs is that it was impossible to own the land. I mean, how could anybody own the land? Wasn't it something that was just always here and always left for the next person? Wasn't it just inconceivable that one person could own this? And you know what happened? The white guy says, "Oh, this is your property," and the Native American goes, "Yeah." He says, "Well, where's the deed?" Indian says, "I ain't got no deed." White guy says, "You ain't got no deed." Native American says, "I ain't got no deed." And the white guy says, "Well, if you ain't got no deed, it ain't your property. And if you ain't got no deed, and if you ain't got no property, guess what? I'm taking it." So it's not like we came here with much of an intention to accommodate anyone we may have run into on the way. So, we've had our dark moments. That whole Western expansion, manifest destiny, it was our manifest destiny to take over the West. Well, who said that? I mean, isn't that kind of like the thing some God might say? It's our manifest destiny. What do you like tell somebody that, guys, it's your manifest destiny to go west? But I don't think it really happened like that. Was it Horace Greeley go west, young man? The truth of the matter is that, especially when it was first founded, there were tremendous boom and bust cycles, of course, regionally. And we've tried to, of course, smooth things out, particularly since we learned more about economics since World War One. But the goal is still the same, as at least the modern goal is still the same: minimal inflation, 2% inflation, and minimal unemployment, just like the Fed is charged with doing. And like I said, Powell, I thought Bernanke was great. Janet Yellen was great. It's only when you get into like the Scott Bessents do you see the and I'm not gonna say incompetence, but I will say, because I think Bessent's actually a fairly competent guy, he's just unwilling to use his intelligence in a way to benefit anyone other than Trump or the Trump administration. And how about a Kevin Hassett guy? I mean, did these guys all go to the Peter Navarro School of Economics? I mean, one of the worst things that, Navarro is one of the worst things to ever come out of ECI. And, way back when, Orange County was extremely conservative. This is the county that gave you Richard Nixon, right? I mean, not that long ago. How about Barry Goldwater one state over in Arizona? I mean, these guys were, they were really conservative, and that would imply some degree of maybe intolerance. And after Reagan's, and I think that there's this intolerance that Republicans may or may not be willing to display. I think my biggest deal with Reagan's terms were that when this was in the early 80s, when he emptied the mental institutions, ended involuntary mental treatment, and turned people loose, he freed them, right? He freed them from the mental institution. Now, of course, he freed them to the streets. But just to show you the compounded problem, not only does Reagan empty the mental institutions, but he cuts the subsidized housing Section 8 subsidies. So you got these people mentally ill people on the street and no place to go. And you know what strikes me about that, along with just the cruelty of it, is how far away this is from my understanding of anything that Jesus Christ ever proposed. I mean, you've got people saying that Jesus is for just abominable things, and like, it's funny. I always trace it back to the clergy. You see, in the South, when people came over and settled and all that. Of course, you started on the coast uh, because it's where the boat docked. So you get off the boat and in port cities is like commerce, right? So things usually cost money. And what if you ain't got any money? Well, if you ain't got any money, you tend to go inland to where things are cheaper, and you can hunt or fish a little bit and provide for your family on your own. You don't need that instant influx of money from a job every week or however they did it. So the further they go inland, and let's say they're primarily Scots Irish immigrants, because I think that was about the time period. And as these people moved inland and settled in isolated places like Appalachia, you can see what happened. They were there and they had religious needs. But what didn't they have? They didn't have an organized church or an organized clergy. And this is crucial, or an educated clergy. Now, you see, in Scotland, you would never find, an uneducated Presbyterian minister. I mean, it just wouldn't happen. Like you rarely find a Catholic that's not, highly degreed in the Catholic Church. Uh, so these people way inland, they need religion, but they ain't got anybody with credentials. So what do? Being, Americans and self-sufficient and all that. Well, they make their own clergy, and they have like these self-taught preachers and all this stuff. And so these self-taught preachers say things like it's our manifest destiny, or God said this is a holy war, or worse than that, God said kill this guy. And they paint everything under the guise of God said. And it just so you have, like I said, this uneducated clergy telling people things that have no religious basis. Okay. And that's why I think you get these preachers today that compare Trump with Jesus. Like I said, it's nothing an educated clergy would ever do. But they're an uneducated clergy, and they get to call themselves reverend, doctor, whatever it is. Uh, but I just kind of thought that was an important subject to touch on as we get ready to wrap it up here. And I'm going to give you guys one last chance to call in at 949-629-3820 and let us know what's going on in your world, or let us know what you got planned for the weekend here. I'm hoping that the sun, of course, comes out a little before 2:00 here, and I realize it's 1:50 something here, and that would be like close to 5 on the East Coast. So I know you guys getting ready to cut out and head for home, and drive safely. I have no idea what the weather's doing there, but be careful. No road rage accidents, please, or no road rage incidents. And better than that would be just no road rage. I know it's really tough. Whoever dive bombs you and slams on brakes in front of you. I mean, it's happened a cajillion times to everybody. And I'm not always successful at accepting behavior like that. But I have found that as far as for my mental health and longevity, that in the scale of things, that's relatively minor. And it's certainly not worth engaging in any kind of behavior that may result in having your freedom of movement restricted. I mean, why people do things that could land them in jail, I'll never know. I mean, just the thought of a cell where you can't move. And how about when somebody gets convicted of a crime and they get a really long sentence, they get hauled away right in the courtroom. I mean, they may never see the light of day again. So don't do anything ridiculous to jeopardize your your freedom. It's one of the few things that we still kind of have in the U.S., and I'm pretty intent on keeping it, which is why I started democracyradionetwork.com, is we are dedicated to electing Democrats because the the Republicans, and in particular Trump's administrations, have looted the country. If they, it's one of those things. If it's not nailed down, they'll take it. And even if it is nailed down, they might try to, get a nail puller. I mean, we've never seen things like this before, and if that means that the response may well be something we've never given before, it clearly makes our response that much more critical to the times because, guys, nobody, at the end of the day, we all want to live in sunshine and peace and prosperity. That's all we want. Are we headed in that direction? No, we're not. I mean, not. Oh, I mean, we're screwed if we look north to Canada. We're screwed if we look south to South America. We're screwed. And actually, I shouldn't say, actually, we screwed ourselves in Canada. We screwed ourselves with South America. We screwed ourselves when we screwed our friends in Europe. We've certainly not doing well in the Far East with Russia and China and Japan. So, guys, and even Australia's having a little anti-Semitic and violence problem. So, and sometimes the closer you get to South Africa, the more you find that racist, violent, Nazi supremacist thing, which is, and again, that's where a lot of the Nazis escaped to was South America, South Africa, and it's not like they just left Germany and the views died. No, the hate lives on, and I try not to promote any sort of hate, but guys, we have to hate the situation as it is now, and commit to not rectifying, but changing directions changing course at our earliest convenience. We cannot if we keep sailing on this heading in this direction with the same guy steering, we'll be lucky if we end up on the rocks. If we're not lucky, we'll sink after we end up on the rocks. But either way, it's not like this guy's capable of steering the boat. So on that, I'm going to end this on an upbeat note. And I'm going to think that it's Friday, May 15th, and that people are going to get together this weekend and either canvass or stuff envelopes or distribute yard signs or do something. It's really, important to keep this momentum up. I'm sure we won't really get, going till, closer to November, but let's make sure we get our good choices in these primaries. And as far as the governorship in California, it would really be better if it was just two people, preferably two Democrats. But it's my opinion that the best we can, or what we should probably prepare for, is a Becerra Steyer election, which might not be bad. I mean, might not be devastating. But Becerra, we need a continuity of Newsom's stability. I mean, if nothing else, we really need stability, and particularly as Californians. So anyway, it's Friday afternoon, and I want to wish everybody a super weekend. Get politically involved, do something physical. Get outside even if you're not a really outdoorsy person, it always helps to get outside, get a little fresh air, and and sit with your neighbors, and you know what? Take the opportunity to, let's say, drop into a Democrat gathering. I'm sure there's all kind of meetups and cookouts and all that stuff, and you'd be amazed how much better you feel being around like-minded people. So, guys, on that cheerful note, I'm your somewhat semi-savvy, politically minded host, Abby Kaufman. And I want to sign off for today and wish everybody a really good weekend. Have fun, take care, stay well. And I forgot what's that thing? What's that thing they always say that I sometimes